Writing the Record, my little organization, is sponsoring this wonderful event because I met this man 20 years ago when he wrote the first book. And we had a author's talk and a book signing at the museum in Culpeper. And we had so many players there, and it was absolutely fabulous. The only problem we had is when it was over, they didn't want to go home. They wanted to stay and talk, and it was inspiring. So when he came out with his second edition, I thought, well, we need to do this again and share this story over and over again. So I'm really happy John with Culpeper Media is here, because it means it will be broadcast on that local TV station. And I do want to explain a little bit how we're going to go today. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to formally introduce Mr. Howard. And he's going to give a talk on his new book. And on this table and these two tables, we have with us today, and I'm so happy, we have with us former players that Darrell has written about in his book. We also have the Culpeper High School Museum represented with their baseball artifacts from when that was such an incredible high school. It was incredible. And on this side, we have my long-term friend, Ron Hill, who is the nephew of Pete Hill, who did not play baseball in Culpeper, but it was his native hometown. He then went to Pittsburgh and started playing in the late 1890s. Yeah, okay. Quite the incredible baseball player. He also was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame posthumously, and they put him in there. This is how I met Ron. They put him in there with the wrong name and the wrong birthplace. And that came to me through the editor at the Star Exponent, because Ron reached out to him and said, there's something wrong with this. So I got it because I said, I want this story. And months later, we did a big series, and then I wrote to the Hall of Fame and said, you got it wrong. And they said, well, tell us what's right. So we did, with all this documentation, and they changed it. And we had a big Pete Hill Day on his birthday. And that was very nice. So we have somebody else in Culpeper who was inducted into a National Hall of Fame, and we're going to talk about that later. And we may have another Negro League player in Culpeper that Ron and I and Phil Dixon are working on trying to establish whether he came to Culpeper when he retired. Okay, enough of my prologue. Darrell, I may not have all this right, but Darrell Howard grew up in Albemarle County, and in his backyard was one of these pasture ball fields. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so
Literally.
it inspired Darrell to, 20 years ago, and even before that, because 20 years ago was when it was published, his first book, Sunday Coming. And it sold out. So now he has published the second edition, which is expanded. And with that, I will stop, and Darrell will talk to you about his book. Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you, Zan. As Zan mentioned, I grew up in Ivy, Virginia, in Albemarle County, western Albemarle County, about 10, 15 minutes from Charlottesville. It was a very rural area, still is rural, but a little more upscale with a more expensive homes and subdivisions and the typical sprawl that's going on all over Virginia. But in those days, I was a good baseball toss from the Ivy, Virginia Eagles field. And to get to that field, with an easy walk out the front door, a couple hundred feet up the road, Route 708. And then we left the road again, and we walked into what we used to call a patch of woods or a thicket, walked through the thicket, which was a worn trail. And a few more feet later, that all opened up into a clearing that the Armstead family, it was called the Armstead Hill. And they were our neighbors in Ivy, but they had cleared the forest or enough forest to make a ball diamond. The Ivy, Virginia Eagles had been playing a long time, and they were a recognized team, but they were one of the worst teams in the league, unfortunately. And the field was legendary. The catcher couldn't see the center fielder. The left fielder couldn't see the right fielder because the outfield sloped downhill badly. I can say that when you were in outfield catching flies, you could see the ball at least, but that was about the highest rating that you could give the field and the setup. And even though the Eagles didn't play very well for a number of seasons, they had the same enthusiastic crowd. The supporters from the community showed up every week to cheer on the team. And, when we did win, it was something to celebrate for the rest of the week. My father had played for a couple of different teams. I think Ivy was either his second or third team. He played when I was an infant, or I guess into the time that I was a toddler. So I first got to see him suit up with the Eagles, and I was fascinated by, to me, I guess it was his Sunday outfit, his, sort of ragtag uniform that the Eagles had, because they didn't have a complete uniform set either. And the black steel cleats that were so popular then, well, it was the only thing then. Just steel and leather. That was, you look at some of these baseball cleats today, and they have this feature and that feature. You got one feature, through the 1960s, and that was black leather and steel, and that was your baseball shoe. And most of all, by that time, my father, I'm sure and older brother, they'd been teaching me to catch, and I had my own little glove, but I was fascinated by his ball glove because it was for the big guys. It was for the real players, and I always wanted to have a glove like my father's. And I'll tell you something about the popularity of baseball in that time and decades before. The glove or gloves, that was an integral part of your childhood. I brought out two gloves today. This one around 6 or 7 years old, maybe younger than that, but I'm guessing around 6 years old when I first got this glove. 10 years old. Should have a third, but I really wasn't any good at baseball, so I don't have a third glove. This one's functional. I made it functional over the years, but it's a little small. So I was due a third glove had I continued to play. That baseball's not for me. Track and field. That's where I have the most talent. But you always, and I remember my father saying when we would have family events or get-togethers, bring your glove with you. Make sure you bring your glove, and we'll play some catch. And that started when I was old enough to stand, basically. Just having a glove and a ball. And I actually, amazingly, I kept the baseballs too. I just didn't bring them with me today. But just playing catch for hours, that was the beginnings of learning baseball. You can do a lot of things on the baseball field, but you got to be able to catch that ball. If you wanted to be on the team, you had to be able to catch the ball a little bit. Or maybe on some days you needed to be able to catch very well. But that was the beginning or beginnings of learning the game. So in the time where I'm on Ivy Diamond, just barely past toddler stage, and I'm standing behind the backstop, and I'm looking out onto the field, a lot like I'm looking at you all, just rapt, because I want to see everything that's going on. That was the second half of my baseball education, that personal close-up view of the players, the field, the home plate collisions, which were amazing because these guys were playing for free. They were playing for the community, from week to week, and they had the most amazing, which to me as a kid that was thrilling to see a couple of guys crash into each other at home plate. But there was no extra compensation, but the competitive spirit and drive, I took that all in viewing baseball and learning a sport. And I'll call him by name because he's gone. One of the Ivory brothers from Ivy, seeing him at the plate, and he played well enough to be on the team and be in the league and all of that, but he just wasn't one of the better players. And seeing him strain to hit that ball, and some Saturdays or Sundays not hitting the ball, and the look of disappointment and defeat. Some guys were gonna, Richard Slaughter, Mr. 5 for 5, or was it 500? One of those, Mr. Hutcherson, they could knock the ball out of the county. But a lot of the other guys, one hit on that Saturday or Sunday, that was going to carry them for the week, maybe for the month. Because they knew they weren't going to get many hits, because they just didn't play as well. But the effort, the motivation to get up there, and what do we have, like 2 or 3 batting helmets, even in the 70s? A lot of the guys weren't wearing batting helmets. And, pitchers would control most of the time, not all the time. But just motivated to get out there and represent their communities in what I came to recognize as community ball teams. And, I'm from Ivy. I had relatives in another community called Coesville. Coesville had a better baseball team than Ivy. My uncles played on that team, and it was Greenwood and Charlottesville brought their team back for a time. Orange is coming this Sunday. I'm not sure I even knew how to get to Orange. But all I knew is that the Orange baseball team was coming to play, Ivy, or maybe it was Barbersville. And, not knowing how to to get to any of these places, but learning the names and realizing that these were the different communities, and they all had baseball teams. They all had a history of baseball, and a number of very good players. So 1999, I'm working a job that's good enough, and thinking about what else I'm going to do with my life, and I have this wild ambition to begin writing, which I always considered myself a guy who's well-read, but certainly no author. You could ask any of my professors who received my late papers, or interesting papers, to say the least. But late 90s, I'm working on material, for my own pleasure, just writing every day. And this, finally deciding I'm going to write something. I want to write, I need to get published. I don't have a topic. On one hand, I've been reading historical accounts, ironically, about the Negro professional leagues, probably collected a few books. I'm a huge sports fan. And I guess, being in my early 30s, I'm just old enough to become a little bit nostalgic. So I'm thinking about times growing up in Albemarle and Charlottesville, and what's changed, what we used to do, what's gone, or what kind of events are just not happening anymore. And of course, the most obvious was the weekend baseball games, and all the communities having teams. And most of the games that I attended, were right there in the neighborhood in Ivy, except for, I guess, when my father was still playing. But, by, I guess, the beginning of the 80s, these teams are disappearing. And, there are no more community baseball teams. And by the time I start writing Sunday Coming, you can't even identify some of the old ball fields because they're either overgrown or there's a house there. There's a subdivision there. There's the whole scene, or what was black baseball in Virginia, it's just faded out of existence. So I'd like to think that and forgive the pun, I started at home base or home plate. And I got together with my brother and my uncle, and I'm brave enough to tell them, hey, I'm going to become a writer, which probably sounded crazy. It sounded a little crazy to me still. I'm sure it sounded crazy to them. But I said, yeah, I'm going to become a writer, and I'm going to write a book about the old baseball teams. And I'm amazed when they say to me, that's a great idea. Like, really? But there's no documentation. I can't go to the library and check out a book about teams playing in Avon or Ivy or Central Virginia. So we start hashing it out. We start talking about the old ball games, the teams and the players, and in some cases we don't even remember the names of the teams, and we don't know all the players' names, but we remember the events. And my brother and my uncle, being older, they remember or recall a little bit more than I did. So I'm amazed when they start throwing out these other names. And yeah, there was this team from Sperryville, or, I don't remember Sperryville, but at some point in time, they came to lopsided ball field Ivy 2 to play the Ivy Eagles. And that's the spring of '99, around April. My uncle gets a first interview for me a month later. One of the Colesville players, one of the more storied Colesville players named Jim Dow, who I discovered in recent years. Jim and I are actually distant relation. But I could write a book about Jim himself without going into his ups and downs in life. But Jim was a really good baseball player. When I met him, that summer he was 65, and I believe Jim turned 90 this year. And he's not in the state that he was in the summer of '99, but he is still around. And so Jim starts, just like unfolding newspaper accounts or maybe the highlights at 11. Jim starts going into these great stories about when he played and who he saw playing baseball, and you know, the guys on the team when he first started playing in the Colesville team, later on when he was managing. He's so animated and he's such a great storyteller that my mind is just reeling. And even though I'm serious about writing, I don't have a laptop. I don't even have an old typewriter. But I return home that evening, and based on Jim's stories, accounts, and recollections, I write the first 5 pages of Sunday Coming by hand on some, we used to call it ruled paper, which is, and I guess that's in a museum these days, and no one's using any ruled paper. But that was the beginning of Sunday Coming. And, word gets around a little bit. My father, we got together one weekend. He's like, I'll take you around to the guys that I played with who are still around. And, this turns out to be one of the more famous or storied families, the Sims family, because there are a couple of those elders still around. And I want to say, yeah, I'm going to be an author, and, I'd like to ask you some questions. But all I really need to say is, the word baseball. You can almost say baseball to any of these men sitting around the room, and they'll launch into either their stories or stories about games. And baseball is just in their blood. You could say it's in their DNA. But they're going to give you some great factoid, some great story, something to relate to you about that golden era of playing baseball, when baseball was still the national pastime. Met Mr. Sam Ayler of Rappahannock County. Didn't know how to get to Rappahannock, had to MapQuest it. But Mr. Ayler was a great interview. He played catcher for the Sperryville Eagles. Now the Sperryville team, some players called them the best team in the league. And they had their, we'll call it a little dynasty during the golden era, the 1960s, playing in one of the established leagues. But Mr. Ayler, he helped to lay out the league origin. He talked about, the players on the Sperryville team that he was fortunate to play with. Talked about a lot of the teams that he played against. And, so I guess this is July, August, and, I'm on a pretty good roll. I meet Mr. Robert Winston, one of the greatest storytellers I think I've ever met in my life. And I recall from that interview, yes, the Wilmington, Virginia Eagles of Fluvanna County. But I remember really wanting to pin him down, who was your best pitcher, who was the best outfielder, and he sort of hurdled all of that, and he just went into, a fantastic baseball story, like it had happened yesterday. So I'm driving home, and I'm a little disappointed because I don't have these position players written down, or, maybe any structure about the team. And I put his tape in because I'm using tapes in that point in time, and I listened to the recording, and I say to myself, I don't need to know any of that, because this man just told me some of the greatest sports stories I've ever heard. I can figure out who played third base or who played center field some other time, but I'm never going to be able to recreate the kind of story that he related to me, that I can use, that really brings Sunday coming to life. It brings those games from a bygone era to life. We don't have any footage. We barely have a couple of pictures. But stories by Jim Dowell and Robert Winston, who they called Cool Papa, they bring it all to life. If you have a little bit of imagination, it will take you back to that era of black baseball in Virginia. Now, along the way, fortunately for me, the guys really want to talk about themselves. I need that. People talk about themselves, and you're writing. It makes the writing a little bit easier because they're going to tell you more than you want to know about themselves. But over and over again, everyone I visit with, one name keeps coming up, and that's Matthew Mac Davis. When we were playing against Barbersville and Mac Davis was pitching, and I hit a home run off Mac Davis. Didn't matter, whatever the reference. Mac Davis over and over again, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy must have been, something short of Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige. Everybody's talking about Mac Davis. And I'm wondering if, no one can tell me if Mac is still around, or, I guess he's still in Barbersville. We don't know. I haven't seen Mac in 20, 30 years. I'm like, wow, I got to talk to this guy, Mac Davis. So at that time I'm living in Charlottesville, I just show up in Barbersville, and there's one store in the vicinity, and I pull into the parking lot of the store, and I'm sort of leaning against my old Honda, and I'm thinking, the first person who even looks like they're from the community, I'm going to ask them if they know Mac Davis. And sure enough, about 4 minutes after I get there on this hot summer afternoon, I think it was August, a lady pulls up to the pump, and she's pumping gas, and I walk over, and I pull out my card, and I say, excuse me, ma'am, I'm not from Barbersville, this community, but I'm looking for someone, and his name is, I think, Matthew or Mac Davis. And I said, do you know him? And she said, yes, I do. He's my father-in-law. So, amazing, right? Kind of kinetic, kind of fateful event. But I go into a little more detail, and I say, I just started writing what I'm hoping to turn into a baseball book, and here's my card. And about a week later to the day, I was sitting in Mr. Davis's living room, and he's learned a little bit about me. He's talking about everything baseball because he's one of the biggest baseball fans ever, I think. And Mr. Davis, even though he's a little humble, he's able to talk about his time playing, and he's able to talk about, all the teams around Virginia because, he played everywhere, I think. So he's talking about, little Washington guys and the Sperryville guys and Culpeper guys, and especially these young guys that he says, who live not far down the road. They call themselves the Orange Gnats. Now, Barboursville is 12 miles from Orange, and in the history of black baseball in Virginia, I would put it somewhere on the list of one of the greatest rivalries. Barboursville and Orange. I'm not sure how it probably goes back a couple of more decades before I start the story, but very competitive, very hard-fought baseball games, and over time, an enjoyable competition. And Mr. Davis really helped to illustrate that rivalry extremely well. And over time, I meet the manager of the Orange Gnats, and Mr. James Washington, and he's more than willing to talk about the Nats and how good they were. And there were other rivalries around the region that also made the play tremendous. And that was the other, besides the guys getting out and playing baseball, and the players can probably answer for themselves, but to me they were great promoters. Because everywhere they went, regardless of what the purpose or what they were doing, and whether it was church, work, or school, they were going to talk about their ball team. We have a ball team. I'm on this ball team. We're pretty good. We've heard about your ball team. We'd like to play, which in the beginning, before there was an established league, and I should explain, they had these games they called it home and home. I come to Culpeper this weekend. Next weekend, you come to Barboursville or Charlottesville, and, for the return match or, return visit. So that was part of the promotion. And that's how, play was established, and amazingly how it kept going. A couple of the guys, there was your booking agent at Sperryville, Mr. Butler. Mr. Butler was a county agent, so he traveled all over the region, and he would make a lot of these matchups for Sperryville, or it sounds like anybody he came in contact with wanted to play some baseball. So, this incredible network of community teams, baseball teams, compared to even my era of growing up, the guys from region to region, they're building relationships and they're getting to know each other outside of baseball or after the ball game. So, guys 2 communities over in Rockingham or Augusta or, wherever your team is based, when you travel, you're making friends, or at least getting to know people. And to me, that's amazing, because it's telling in the way that how culturally we're more connected in that era, and how what we called black communities in that point in time, how the communities are connected. Whether it's the connection through the baseball team, or it may have been the connection through the church first. And, some deacon who was a little more sporting said, well, we have a baseball team too. If you're interested in coming to Colesville or coming to Ivy, give us a game. So there was plenty of that happening. Relationships. Someone in Elkton visiting someone in Orange, and so, there's a courtship, and maybe the Elkton player is leaving that community for the next community. So there were nuptials, all brought about by the weekend baseball game, and the way people are interacting and getting to know one another. That same summer of '99, I was fortunate enough to meet Mr. Billy Shanks of a community known as Riva, Virginia, Zan's home community, right down the road. And talking with Mr. Shanks, he had a great history of the game, and not just local, regional, but a little farther afield, I guess you would say, teams from Northern Virginia that they'd played, and just amazing stories about who was on the team and how they played. Riva only had 9 ball players.
I see.
Yeah, from week to week. So, I guess everything had to be, you had to be perfect and play a perfect game and hope no one got a sprained ankle. But they had a dynamite baseball team. But no uniforms in the beginning. They were, I guess, literally playing cow pasture ball and just, suiting up in whatever they had. Well, up the road, there was another team, a very good team called the Culpeper Dragons. And, the manager of the team was a Mr. Charlie Lane. Now, Mr. Lane was a great sportsman. He was a great mentor of young people. And from what I'm told, Mr. Lane loved to win. He always played to win, and he he pushed the guys a little bit. That excuse of, well, I lost my glove, or I'm late because, just go sit down over there until I call you, because Mr. Lane didn't want to hear it. This photo here, I'm not sure whether this might have been after a Culpeper win, and I can just imagine Mr. Lane getting on them about, okay, we got practice on Tuesday, I don't want to hear excuses. He was always on to the next thing, not, no resting on your laurels or celebrating too much today because we got to play again, in a few days. But Riva, Mr. Shanks, and the Riva team really wanted to play against Culpeper because they thought that, yeah, they look good, and they're playing. I think it was called Fireman's Field here in Culpeper. Yeah, they don't have to play in the weeds; they get to play on the nice field in Culpeper. But we have a good team too, and so they start to get after Mr. Lane about scheduling a game, playing a game, and Mr. Lane says, we're not, look at you, you don't even have uniforms. We're not playing any Bush teams. This goes on for, probably a couple of months. Could have been early spring. Apparently, there was a Mr. Marshall, and he was a funeral home director, and I think he had a little more sway with Mr. Lane, and he's starting to get on Mr. Lane, saying, "You keep making these excuses, Charlie. I think you're really afraid that this Riva team might get the best of you." So that pushes Mr. Lane right over the edge, and he says, "Well, if they can get something that looks like a uniform, yeah, we'll give them a game." And sure enough, as related by Mr. Shanks, they make a trip to Charlottesville and they got 9 uniforms. One of those uniforms goes to a young teenage Richard Slaughter, who his uncle had, that I've been working with Richard, he's as good as anybody we can find. So they put you on first base.
Yeah, first base.
And game in Culpeper, I guess.
Yeah, in Culpeper.
Right. So no, this is on the good ball field, and no excuses about rocks and pebbles and holes that you can step in before you can feel the ball. It's a tough game, but sure enough, Riva comes out on top. And I've heard some different accounts about the actions of the Culpeper team following the game, and needless to say, Mr. Lane was not too pleased. He did give Riva their due for, playing a better game, but it was almost historic because, Riva was already established as a ball team, but that put them on the map as the other worthy Culpeper County baseball team. And soon after, or probably not long after, players like Mr. Slaughter here is playing for Riva and Culpeper. Am I correct? Yeah. Depending on scheduling, because Mr. Lane was not a fool by any stretch, or of the word fool. He was going to find the best possible players that he could put on the field. So the only thing that was it early '60s, a couple bad accidents or one really bad
Accident in '59. That's when 3 players got killed.
Right.
Yeah, hit that tree up at Woodfield, little tree. Yeah.
And that broke up the aces, and many of the guys who wanted to continue playing either played in Culpeper or I guess later on Sperryville. And
Yeah, definitely some Sparrow, couple played in Culpeper. So, yeah.
yeah. So, that became early on one of the more entertaining features when I started writing about Culpeper County and learning this region, which sometimes I lump together Culpeper, Riva, Sperryville, Little Washington, because they were farther east than some of the other teams. I think there was probably also a pretty good Orange Culpeper rivalry. And, I think with probably the cruel irony, a lot of these players from both teams came out of Carver High School or Carver Regional High School. So in one sense, they were great teammates during the school year, and then school's out, they become big-time rivals on the baseball diamond because, one player's from Culpeper, the other's from Orange, or one player's from Madison, the other's from Orange, and now, it probably made the play better because more competitive, I'm guessing. Familiarity breeds even stronger competition sometimes. That's why sometimes playing against your family is the worst, because they know you, you know them, but there's no one you'd rather beat more than family. So by the end of summer '99, I'm about 50 pages in, and I have a lot of great stories. I have teams and team names that I didn't know anything about, had never heard of, even though I considered myself part of the history. But I'm wondering, this is all great local stuff, but is this enough content to reach that goal publication? Is there enough there? Is there enough story? Are there enough facts? So based on, a little bit that I've read, references from books about the Negro Leagues, and just some recollections of the former players of teams they either played against or heard about, this leads me to the University of Virginia. And, if anyone who's done any research in college, that area called the stacks. And the stacks is books to the ceiling and and reference material, and usually there are, in most universities, a couple of different departments. So I wind up in an area called periodicals with archived newspapers, Virginia newspapers, archived African American history. And that opens up not just a new world of information for the writing of Sunday Coming, but in viewing some of these newspapers, the Norfolk Journal and Guide, the Washington, D.C. Afro-American, the Richmond Afro-American, the Baltimore Afro-American, the Pittsburgh Courier. This is bringing to life our history, our legacy, and I'm saying everything we need to know is here in these newspapers. If we had the time, it was so engrossing and so revealing that some days I'd get distracted in my research for Sunday Coming, and I'm reading these other fascinating stories, out of Black history. And I'm just amazed that it's all here in the content of these newspapers that are no more. That, for someone like me who considers himself a historian, I'd never heard of. Didn't know anything about the Pittsburgh Courier or probably not even the Norfolk Journal and Guide. But they become instrumental in my historical timeline and focused history of Black baseball in Virginia. So I start writing about the Tidewater teams, a team from Roanoke, the Roanoke Black Cardinals, one of the better baseball teams in Virginia in the 1930s. I read about scheduled matchups with the Negro Professional League teams when they're in town and traveling. And players who were from Virginia who were good enough to be picked up by traveling Negro Professional League teams like Raymond Dandridge, called one of the greatest third basemen of all time. No disparagence of Brooks Robinson, but as great as Brooks Robinson was for the Baltimore Orioles, they're saying that Raymond Dandridge from Richmond was greater because he played closer to home plate playing third base. And anybody who has ever played that part of the infield, they can tell you, you either better field it or you better. That's the hot corner, right? Some hard hit balls down the line, or, I guess to your left towards shortstop. But I'm learning about Raymond Dandridge from Richmond and all of the great Tidewater teams who could have been in the Negro Professional Leagues. They just didn't have enough sponsorship or strong enough sponsorship. And maybe due to the location and the number of teams, they have great press coverage. So just going from newspaper to newspaper, or, all of those months of the summer, I'm following these baseball teams over a few seasons, and that was a huge, invaluable boost to the writing of Sunday Coming, and like I said, the historic timeline, because I'm able to assess the origins of our baseball, as it's called, and on a timeline, which edition 1, basically 1930 through 1980. Edition 2, I go back to the teens with Pete Hill. But it gives me not only content, but context of, our quality of play and the popularity, the promotion, if there was any promotion. And like I said, just players who stood out in Virginia's history. Mr. Sam Allen was scheduled to be with us today. He grew up watching a lot of these teams, the Newport News Giants, the Portsmouth Grays, legendary teams from Norfolk and Newport News, who were, as I say, they were press-worthy, whether it was a little promotion in what was called the white media or white press, or constant coverage and promotion by the Norfolk Journal and Guide. So summer 2000, I'm a year in. I start trying to get the elders, or the guys as they were called, trying to get them together. We began having reunions. There's been a little more talk about the baseball book and who I am and what my efforts are in getting the history finally documented. And, we're not able to bring back the baseball games anymore. The guys these are retired men for the most part, grandfathers, but they still have that spirit that when you meet them and they start talking baseball, they still have that competitive spirit, even if it's only from memory. And so we revived the spirit of what was our baseball. And we're, in their time, which since the beginnings of Sunday Coming, a generation has transitioned. Most of, I think there are 3 or 4 men that I interviewed in '99 who are still around. At the most, I met both of the Ware brothers sometime '99 to 2000. So they're on a short list of 4 or 5 guys in the room who were, still with us. Mr. Slaughter I met later. Of course, the stories preceded, his lore preceded him. By the time I sat down with Mr. Slaughter, there were so many stories about his legendary home runs and pitching and fielding that felt like I already knew him. Late 2000, I'm actually shopping the book because I have probably a little more than 100 pages. Received 2 offers. Went with the second offer from the publisher McFarland out of Jefferson, North Carolina. Another year of doing interviews, meeting ball players and writing, and I guess just over 2 years later, Sunday Coming Edition 1 is in print. And of course, it seems it was a whirlwind then, seems like a whirlwind now, all these years later, 26 years later. Could not have started a day later, because I knew, even starting in the spring of '99, some of the more storied ball players were already, no longer with us. So I had this drive. I felt that something related to the writing of the book, the research, trying to schedule an interview. This was something I needed to do, if not every day, almost every day. And I probably, if I'd been that driven in college, another story, but Sunday Coming is in print, fall of 2002. Looking back, retrospective or perspective, one interview that stands out from, I believe, the year 2000 was with Mr. Roger Bowles of Wilmington, Virginia, a very good player for the Wilmington Eagles. Should also mention that Mr. Bowles was one of the few white players who played in the established league at that point in time. And the first question he asked before I could even sit down and start the interview is like, why are you writing this book, or why do you want to do this? And so I, of course, detailed, I'd like to think I'm very interested in history, very interested in the history of the communities that once were. And I think it's, it's such a great story. And, he said, that's what I wanted to hear. Reason being, as an outsider, as one of the few white players in the league, he quickly realized and he said, we could have played anywhere, and at that time, when he started playing, he had just started playing baseball at the University of Richmond. But he said, we showed up week to week to play because it was important to the guys in the community, to the elders who played all those years of baseball. And maybe they weren't playing anymore, but they were still associated team, like a Mr. Paul Franklin of Wilmington. And he said, even though we could have played anywhere, nowhere was there the spirit and competitive drive that we found week to week in these ball games and in the cow pastures and sticks of Central Virginia. And he said, I recruited friends from the baseball team at the University of Richmond. He said, don't expect anything but some, great baseball. And after they played one game, he didn't have to say anything because they were absolutely gonna show up, make the drive from Richmond or wherever to play for the Wilmington Eagles. So, in lending perspective, how important, how competitive, what was the legacy, that was a great part of defining the legacy. And I am so thankful that I was, not just that I came up with a good idea or I had a great ambition to push myself over the top and become an author, but culturally the importance and historically the importance. As I mentioned, as an outside researcher, I was constantly at the University of Virginia. Well, today I'm a special collections author at the University of Virginia. So, Sunday Coming Edition 1 is part of their collection, which I couldn't have envisioned at that point in time. 2013, I had a near fatal accident or event, almost lost my life. Was not working on edition 2 at that point in time. Had thought about it, I'm sure. In fact, I know that I had thoughts, I just didn't have time to work on the second edition. So I often, reflect on, if I were not here today, no second edition, no follow-up, maybe the legacy, the history of Sunday Coming and black baseball in Virginia, maybe it fades away a lot like, the history of the game when I started. 2018, I'm doing events because, amazingly, the book's out of print, but it's in demand. Which sounds great, but I don't have any copies of Sunday Coming, save for a precious few. So, that creates a drive in the writing and meeting a few new players and doing interviews for the second edition. Great event in Orange at the Arts Exchange, and once again it revives the spirit because it's not just a baseball talk, it's a great time. Just talking about how I got started writing the book and listening to the players. And I always say, if you can't have a good time with these guys around, you can't have a good time doing anything. Because they bring the ball game with them. So after shopping the book around and the second edition, proposing the second edition of Sunday Coming, and almost like the first edition, I'm sure that this is going to work. This publisher is going to pick up Sunday Coming and falls through. The plight of a writer-author. I reconnect with McFarland of Jefferson, North Carolina again, saying, hey, edition 1, it's been out of print, but I have more stories, even have a few more photographs this time around. What do you think about revisiting publication? And not banking on, they published the first book. I actually send them the material, and probably less than a week, they're like, absolutely, we'd like to revisit republishing Sunday Coming for a second edition. And one of the values of Sunday Coming that should make it attractive for my publisher based in North Carolina is that I mention black baseball teams from North Carolina and how they played against Virginia teams and the history of black baseball, along with the Virginia history. It's a book of genealogy that I didn't take into account 26 years ago when I started the writing. I have people contact me from different states. I'm learning about my grandfather. I heard that he played baseball on a team in Virginia. Here's the name of the team. Could you help me learn a little bit more about him? And oftentimes I'm able to tell them or, get back to them with, yes, he played on this team. This was his position. He was good enough to play in the Negro Leagues, or he did play on a Negro League team for a short time. That's been amazing. And just, I think reconnecting with the elders who are important to the story. Without the elders around me, I wouldn't have been able to get Sunday Coming off the ground and be inspired week to week. Whether I had, a lot of good new material or, just editing and rewriting the material that I had in front of me. That's it. That's the story of Sunday Coming, black baseball in Virginia. Now for the most fun part to me, question and answer. All things black baseball in Virginia. And I'm going to call on the gentleman around me, of course, in answering, any possible questions that you have. Or
I mentioned earlier that Ron, I don't know where you are, Ron, but Ron and I are trying to research another individual who played for the Negro Leagues, who has a connection to Culpeper. I haven't been, those of you that know me know I'm pretty meticulous about documentation, and I have not yet been able to nail it down, but his name was John H. Fry, which we all know Fry is a big Madison, Culpeper, and Orange name. He went by the nickname Jack Fry, and he is written up in the Saul White's book, but I can't, and there was a John Fry living in Stevensburg in the 1880s. But what I was told, and Ron was told from Phil Dixon, who's quite the researcher on Negro League baseball players, was that he moved to Culpeper And in 1904, he died in Brandy. Of course, Brandy and Stevensburg are pretty closely connected. So I can't make the connection between the John Fry in Stevensburg and John Jack Fry, who played baseball. So if anybody has any information on that, if you could just see me later. I'm not giving it up yet. You've got, what have you got in there? I
That's
can't read.
probably the latest reference, but
To Jack Fry,
yes,
yes.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, and we do have some information on Jack Fry, the baseball player. But I haven't been able to tie it to Culpeper yet. I'm working on it. So, it's your deal again with these famous guys that are here. And I know they have stories to tell.
Beautiful. Before I reintroduce the panel, I've been going on and on about first edition and second edition. Differences between the two, lots of great stories and facts in the first edition. Second edition, more great stories, some stories missed first time around, interviews that I didn't get together. Sat down formally with Mr. Slaughter for the first time to get together some material for the second edition, and he contributed some great photos from his time playing baseball. Two important chapters, or I see them as important in the second edition. Is the first is, and it starts off the first chapter of the book, Pete Hill, A Legacy Nearly Lost, the story of Negro professional legend John Preston Hill, co-authored by my friend Zan Nelson. TV, compared to dramas, I'll take a documentary first. So I'm always looking for a good documentary. One weekend, I'm watching TV and I find this documentary titled, Is This Heaven? It's about the Negro professional leagues. I'm there, I'm watching, and all of a sudden Zan is on this. I know this person. It's Zan from Culpeper. And Mr. Hill, in the back, he's part of the documentary also, but this is amazing. I didn't know that, I've probably read about all the teams that Pete Hill played for, but I didn't know he was from Virginia, and I contacted Zan soon after, and she's already written the story and worked up the Pete Hill tribute. I believe he'd already had the Hall of Fame ceremony. And this is 2018. I'm back working on material for the second edition. I guess it was sometime before I'm signed. We talk about collaborating. And so Zan is, I'm happy to say, a guest author or co-author in the writing of Sunday Coming, the second edition, and it's a very important story. It's instrumental to my work and the story of black baseball in Virginia. And a little more, I'm a studier of genealogy and historical data. I've been researching both sides of my family and discovered all kinds of amazing things. But Zan's story brings to light our migration from the Mid-Atlantic, from Virginia, that's not talked about as much as the migrations from the deep south. That, it's become well-known and storied. But we also had our own migrations from post-Civil War Virginia, post-Reconstruction Virginia, to Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, New York, sometimes even New England. In some cases, there's a Rhode Island. There's a Negro former professional league player who was born in Orange that I learned about recently, which is amazing. The other chapter that I intended for the first edition but ran up against the deadline is titled Race Against Time. And Race Against Time details our history of playing baseball in America, in Virginia, but how we've somehow faded from that baseball landscape. We've gone from a presence of, I think it was maybe 12% in major representation in Major League Baseball to below 5% these days. And even on a high school or local level, our presence in baseball has just disappeared. Which, I made a big deal out of my old gloves. It's just hard to believe that we don't play baseball anymore.
That's right.
And the setting is gone, the meaning's gone, the mentoring or mentorship, which was so important and so instrumental in encouraging us and getting us out there to play. Mm-hmm. We don't have that anymore. And so it's, I think we're gaining some footing again in playing baseball, but it's more of an uphill climb because we don't have the mentorship and the rudiments of the game just aren't there anymore. I had mothers contact me, my son is 12 years old, 13 years old, he really wants to play baseball. Should I do? And I don't want to tell them that's pretty late to start playing baseball, but that's an actual truth is that it's a game that you start playing at 5 years old almost. And like I said, it starts with catch that ball, learn to catch the ball, learn to field the ball. But nevertheless, I have hopes that we will, in the coming years and decades, have more of a presence in baseball again. And Race Against Time is more of the why, who, what, when, where, and why, and all of the factors that went into our, our diminishing presence in baseball from the desegregation with Jackie Robinson to present day and what happened and what didn't happen, what was in our favor, what was against us. Some of the reasons being our own that we just quit playing baseball for other sports. So, yeah.
So, I'm going to interject here because it's one of the reasons why I believe in you and this book and these fellows, is that we want to spread this word. We want to tell this story. And when you hear, and you've just heard a little bit, but we're going to hear more, when you hear of the excitement and you called it spirit, I call it vibe, it's the same thing. If you all could be exposed to these younger generations and tell these stories, and they could hear these stories, that might be the inspiration to get them back on the playing field like Darrell is talking about. And thankfully, where did he go? The film, oh, I see it. I have a hard time seeing. I see it now. It's all right, John, you don't have to do anything. But this is going to be on the local network, and even if you live in Riva and you don't get John's TV station, you can still download it as a YouTube. So let's ask these guys what got them going so hard. Plus, I want to ask Richard, what in the world is a hatchet bat?
I need help. I need help.
Can you tell us?
It was a hatchet bat.
No,
He had just the opposite. It was just
Smooth
low.
swing.
Oh, that chopping swing that he had, yeah.
well, is that what it was?
Yeah, sometimes I would be sad. Come down.
That's right. What he's doing, he's actually placing the ball.
I wish we had a bat here.
Couldn't get him out, because he could place it. And what you see him doing, he's placing it.
Trying to play.
Because a lot of people like, what's Slaughter doing on that picture? I was there. Slaughter placed the ball, put the ball in the way he wanted. It make no difference what defense you set up for him.
Yeah.
Now, I remember
it.
you saying that, and it's interesting that Ken Griffey Jr. says the same thing, but he said that you didn't really consider yourself a great home run hitter. It's just that you had these drives that kept going because of the way you hit the ball.
Yes. Still looking for one.
Slaughter was an average hitter. He stayed up in his 600-700s. He was average. He's bad for average. You couldn't get him out. He's always on base. You look around, Slaughter's on base. Guys try to get him out defensive. Too smart. I played with a lot of guys like that.
Well, how about your competition over here, Reverend Anthony? How many home runs did you hit?
If you want to hear a fish story,
Put him on the spot.
I got some base hits. Thank God, some base hits.
Yeah.
If I ever hit a home run that was in a field like, I think you were speaking to where we can't see the outfield from the infield, I might get a home run out like that. No, I hit more base hits than anything, and you know that's just how it was with me. To tell the truth about it, but I enjoy playing ball. Though. We look forward to Sunday.
But you were a consistent hitter for the most part.
If you let Cousin Ricky can tell you, yeah, I was consistent, but my thing was, I played when I started playing, when we was able to replace the guys that was in those positions before us, because that you had to wait until your turn.
That's right.
And so when we was able to get in there, they never did take us out.
That's right.
So for the next years, we were constantly in our positions, and I had bad knees, and I had them when I was young, even when I was going to school and before. But I would play ball in the left field. Was my major place, and if my leg kicked out of place while I'm out there running in on a ball or whatever, if I could fight it off just for a moment or two, I'm going to stay in that game. And so I don't think I left the game, but maybe one time that because of that injury. But and it's not just me. I'm just speaking that most of all of the guys that stayed healthy, and they stayed in the game. I mean, you know, you come out when coach tell you to come out for whatever reason. Maybe we got a big lead or whatever. But most of the time, most of all of our players, old and young, they stayed kind of healthy. And so I thank God for that. Because I don't want you to keep coming back to me. I do need to say a couple of things. I did pitch some, but I don't think I pitched against Orange. But I pitched to some other teams, and I was left-handed. We had three pitchers that was main, and one was Uncle Mac. He's not going to come out unless he want to come out. The other was Strawder Jackson. He was the pitcher and he was a hard hitter. And it was, who else we had pitching? Johnny Fry. But Johnny Fry left. He was from Madison, but he played for us for years. And so that gave me an opening. So then I was able to pitch some. And there's one game I'm remembering in particular across the mountain. And I was doing so good. They let me start the game. And I was doing so good, I struck the first guy out with my little left hand curve. Next guy came up.
You ain't found the ball yet?
I think he walked me. I think I walked him. And then I picked him off on first base trying to steal. Then I was really feeling good then. That was the first inning. And after about maybe 2 balls, my Uncle Mac was looking at me. The guy didn't get a hit. I walked him. I walked the next guy. And sure enough, the next guy I walked. It was time for them to bring me out. So anyway, they took me out of the pitching spot. But the guy that was playing in left field for me, he had to go out. I stayed in the game. But what I was tickled about was that I was doing so good in that first inning. Struck a man out and got one, walked one, and then threw him out. Oh, I was on the road. But that was the end of that story.
Rick's your first cousin.
Oh, Rick, tough. He could talk for himself, but Rick was, and not because he's my cousin, but Rick could catch that ball. I mean, Rick could play the field. He played last time you were playing right field when yeah. But here's the thing about him though. He played around because he was a high school player as well. But I never played baseball in high school. I just played in that and other leagues when we played softball. But Rick and Stanley, his youngest brother, he's still living in Richmond. Those guys had some of the best on, but Keith had the best. Those guys could throw you out from outfield.
Keith had the second best.
Well, he said Keith had the second, but I'm gonna let him take it. He got it.
Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing I started playing baseball, I was 12 years old, and we had infield they would let us play infield, catch the infield while they was warming up. And my dad, my cousin, they would throw the ball at me, they'd like lob it. My dad looked at me and said, "Don't do that. Throw it over there like you're a man." Well, I had to learn how to either catch the ball or get out of the way. And if I got out of the way, then I was going to hit when I got home. But I guess the most gratifying experience I had was my dad was pitching, and I got to catch him. And I think I just put the glove and said, put a signal down, he just threw it out, closed my eyes and hit the glove. My dad was something else.
Yeah.
But then I guess one game we played, the only person that wasn't kin to the family was a catcher. I had a cousin at third, I was a short, brother at second, cousin at first, Robin in the outfield, my brother in center field, and my other cousin at left field. So it was just like a family affair.
Y'all the family.
No, I should add. No, I should have added earlier that a lot of these community teams around Central Virginia that I came to know growing up, the ball teams were made up by the families from those communities, and that added another dimension because these families were something else when it came to playing baseball. You talked about Barboursville. It was a big part of the Davis family, the Greenwood Hawks. It was the Sims family. They would do anything to win, never like to lose. Coesville, the Dow family, and on and on.
Quick question. Your book is entitled Sunday Coming. So obviously there were games that were being played other than on Sunday. But my interpretation is a large amount of games were played on Sunday right after church.
That's correct.
And so that must have been a really festive kind of day for a lot of people, not only the ball players, but the fans that came out to watch the game.
Yeah.
Could not
What
wait.
they did in terms of helping Sunday become Sunday. I'm sure there was some food out there and some drinks out there.
They definitely sold food.
So Sunday was a special night, so to speak.
Salad, chicken.
Without question. I mean, from the baseball game happening to a lot of the teams had some really outstanding concessions. You know, who had the best concessions? Was it Avon or was it in Sperryville? 'Cause
What was that?
Avon was known for its concession stand.
Concession?
Right.
Barbecue. My mama was a cook. So she did the potato salad and the chicken and all of that.
You had to have chicken and potato salad, bro.
Churchman did too.
You didn't have that, you didn't have no
Miss
game.
Churchman,
Cookie and drinks.
she had something else. She had something in the trunk if you wasn't illegal. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
No, she
See, I
wasn't.
came to play with you all, after I left the Nats, I went to play with Bob.
Yeah, Miss Churchman used to come to all the games.
This is quite a memory though. I was the scorekeeper at A.G. Richardson Elementary School, 6th and 7th grade. These guys probably remember, we went to Orange.
Oh,
We
yeah.
went to different places, Mr. Dutton.
Madison.
All team, and I can't remember, did you all come to Culpeper? I can remember going.
Oh, we came.
Oh, yeah, we
Yeah, I
came.
can remember going, but, you know, back 6th and 7th grade. So that was.
Couldn't beat us, A.G. Richardson,
Well,
Wildcats.
one of the,
Couldn't let them schools
Used
beat.
to rain.
one of the best games we played was the Orange Tigers. We're playing,
That was
Culpeper
fast.
Dragons.
Yeah.
And we were waiting up until the ninth inning, and Richard Slaughter was at the bat. And I got 2 strikes on him.
That's his
Then
history.
Darrell Starks
Remember
threw
that.
that goofy ball. And I don't think we found the ball yet. And it was like a hatchet swing. Rich got up, and his head was back, like, sort of like this, and it went straight across, and the ball would rise from there. So it was beautiful.
Damn.
Yep, but Richard and I played on high school together. Of course, he ruined it, he put me in the outfield because he played first in the line. That's why I went somewhere else.
So you were on the Tigers, the old Tigers team and the Nats team?
No, I was I came after them. I practiced with the Tigers.
You didn't play yet.
We didn't play, they would let us play, they let us play, like, I think he said, we could get on the field and
Right.
play until it's time to play,
Till that
for
time.
them to play. But the Orange Tigers, Charlie Lane from Culpeper and Flip Robinson was
Orange.
Oh,
Tigers from Orange. And they would always fuss. The fussing started before they even, the game before the first ball, so they started arguing.
What were they fussing?
They fussing everything.
Charlie Lane was like that too.
That's what Charlie Lane and Flip, yes.
Yeah.
It was crazy. But Richard broke the game up. Darrell was pitching.
Yeah.
I mean, Darrell would throw a ball almost 100 miles an hour. He had a knuckleball, he would throw about 90 miles an hour. And that's probably how I learned how to catch, was because he would, I was going with his daughter-in-law, and I married her actually, so I would have to catch him.
Back in the day.
Yeah, I said, this is when they were using the piece of meat to put in there to pat in your hand.
Oh, yeah.
That was the day.
That was the day, yes.
Well, one of our former players not only played baseball, but played softball. Yeah, you're already pointing at him.
Yeah.
And what I learned, a day late and a dollar short, was that he was inducted into the National Softball Hall of Fame.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, I played baseball.
You want to talk about that at all?
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am. I
Hutchinson?
got my start in baseball. Loved it. Played a couple years. This team called the Brandy Aces. You either had to fight or win if you gave a brand. But anyway, played for a couple years, and then that's when the American Legion brought me in. Alan, though. First black player on the American Legion team. That's when I learned about a baseball helmet. We didn't wear no helmet. We just braved it out at the plate. You got knocked out, you got knocked out. But it's something like proving yourself a man to go up there and face some of these pitchers. These guys are something. They didn't knock you, strike you, they knock you out. But anyway, I started in American Legion baseball. Played a year of that, left. And then I started playing softball. And I found out right away softball was a whole lot more lucrative than baseball I was playing. And money just started coming from everywhere. And I never went back to baseball because the leagues just died out. And the Lord just gifted me. Yeah. That softball was a whole lot slower than that baseball. I could hit it. And this team right here, Rich has got a picture of that team, Continental Homes. I'm on the end right there.
Yeah.
So I got my jump start from there. We were playing a big tournament one week, and this big teams came in because they was qualifying for world tournaments. It was a team out of Fairfax called the Associated Glass, remember?
Yeah.
Glass. And this guy kept running out. I got knocked out. We got knocked out. I didn't, because I didn't play with them that weekend, but I played with them on the team, which was a mistake. But you know. Anyway, after we played, I got knocked out. This guy come running out. He says, "Man, what are you using?" Richard will tell you, I didn't use no softball bat. Aluminum. It was a Big Daddy baseball. Remember softball bat, Big Daddy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I hit him where people couldn't believe you hit him. I said, "Man, that guy used no wood." So Associated Glass guy come running out. He says, "Listen, I'd like to introduce you to my manager because he wants to know, would you like to play with us next week? Or playing in Maryland." So I said, "Okay, I'll go back and meet this guy." This guy says, "Is that bat loaded?" I said, "That bat's not loaded, just a regular Big Dad Louisville slugger." He said, "We'd like for you to play with us next week in Albany, Maryland." Man, I go to Albany, Maryland. They took my bat. They swore that bat was loaded. They went over that bat, underweighted everything. Took that bat and killed it, and the rest was history. Yeah, went on from there to play pro softball. Played in Baltimore, and then got a pro name, got Boom Boom Hutchinson, went on to Philadelphia. One of the first guys to put his name on a bat. I got that stuff here. If y'all want to look at that, it's a pro softball magazine. Because I like the young people say, I got the receipts.
All right, man. That's all
Got the
right.
receipts.
It's worth mentioning that the popularity of softball in the 70s, unfortunately,
Took over baseball.
also signaled the demise of a lot of the baseball teams because, I don't know, maybe the transition from baseball to softball for some of the guys was more attractive. They could answer better than I could. But a lot of the teams in Barboursville, Coesville, quit playing baseball and started playing softball in the summers.
That's right. You're right about that.
Well, I want to go back to something that you said earlier. How many of these players that are with us today, how many of you went to Carver?
Say that again?
How many of you went to
Carver
Carver?
High School.
High school.
I went to Carver, but I didn't play ball, but I went to Carver.
Okay, thank you. And I don't want to lose fact of that Carver is here today and displaying some of the baseball memorabilia that they had. And you talked about that they played on did you play on the Carver baseball team?
Yes.
I didn't
Okay.
have to play.
I didn't.
the same home runs that you had otherwise?
We had no transportation and because in Orange and Madison, places like that,
Right.
they didn't have activity buses, we didn't have cars. So I went out for football and I went for basketball.
Yes.
I went out for it. I did not, I stayed for one practice and I hitchhiked 30-something miles to Barbersville. That was the end of that game.
Yeah,
So no, that's why
Right.
many of us
we
didn't.
did the
And,
same.
and Marlene Ware told me a story about the transportation issue. It's things that we often don't think about, that, how do you get to the games? How do you get home after the games? And you end up sharing and staying with other team players' families,
That's right.
regardless of what the activity is. But I do think that it's interesting that these same players who played together, and this is what you were alluding to, played together on their high school teams, then summer came and you were arch enemies, not really, but, you know,
That's right.
but
You're
you
right.
wanted to beat them.
Yeah, we did.
And maybe you already knew a little bit about how they played.
Oh, yes,
So
very much so.
it's just, I know that our, I don't know, I can't see the clock, but,
It's 5 at.
okay. So, I did want to speak also, and maybe you all can talk about this, or some of you all may want to ask the players some questions. I know Alan Laban played with some of the players here, and raise your hand, Alan. I went to school with Alan.
We were talking about traveling. I'd like for the guys assembled to talk about what it was like to travel on a Sunday with all the home fans, and to show up in these desolate little enclaves like Ivy, where I grew up, where all you heard was the birds and maybe a few cars here and there. But all of a sudden, this rural enclave would come to life with this deafening roar because the baseball game had started.
That's right.
So, what are your memories of traveling with the team
Well,
How did you travel?
Al traveling with the Nets was that James Watson was our manager.
Yeah.
And he owned a cab business. So he carried most of us to the games, away games, in his cab.
All we had to do buy gas.
All the way Harrisonburg, all we had to do by the gas.
Yes.
And because we had a couple of ball players on the team that had a car, we carried a few people.
And I tell you traveled well. The Nats fans were always behind you.
Oh, yes.
Right. We,
One that had a car at that time.
well, after I had finished with Barbersville, I went to Grassland Taggers. They were in Orange County. They had gotten into this stage where they got the motorcycle and they started riding the motorcycles, driving to the game. So we had to go to Harrisonburg to play, and up the mountain, those boys drove those motorcycles up to the mountain there to play a game. When they got there, the pitcher got on the mound, he couldn't even raise his arm. So we had to forfeit the game. And I said, this is it, I'm finished. That's when I quit baseball.
You have questions, right?
I must have missed this part. How did these games come together? Was it like a league, or was it like someone from this town called someone from this town? Let's meet Sunday and play?
Well, we didn't wind up having a league, a valley league, yeah.
Eventually, okay.
Yeah, eventually, yes.
Yeah, a lot of the origins of play in Virginia, as I titled it or referred to it, was home and home. When we would meet up, whether a social event, church, you talked about your ball team, I talked about my ball team in my community, whether I played or not. And we tried to, get something together to schedule a matchup at a later date. If things went well, if I came to your field and we played a good game, we would invite you to our field.
That's right.
And, you know, beyond that, I'm in Ivy, but I know Robert in Barbersville, so I refer your team to Robert. Hey, you guys, Barbersville should play this team next. And so began the circuit, and I call it a circuit of social relationships and friendships. And they would, amazingly, from summer to summer, it all worked out. You know, I'm sure there were some scheduling mishaps where, you know, mistakenly scheduled one team over another. But for the longest period in Central Virginia anyway, it was just these seemingly made-up scheduling of games on the fly. Now, in the early 60s, there were a few people thinking about having a baseball league. Wouldn't it be a great thing to have a league, and, you know, we have a start time. Sometimes we're starting at 3 o'clock, sometimes the team's late and it's almost 4:30. The Roscoe Burgess of Harrisonburg, Mr. Hugo Scott of Quincy, Virginia, in Greene County. And I want to say, even though he was not involved with the league, Mr. Ellis Glasgow from Washington, Virginia, they're all brainstorming about how can we make our play a little bit, you know, more uniform, how can we be more connected. And so they developed the very first league, and they actually, even though it was a long overdue happening, they really needed to convince these guys that yes, the league play would be a good thing. We all need to have uniforms. We all need, I don't know, official start times. Having a few official umpires would be better than your cousin. Your cousin that you found at the last minute to umpire the game. So all that came together. There were 6 teams in the beginning. They convinced I'm not sure who was Mr. Buckner the manager?
Yeah,
Probably.
But Hugo Scott was, what's his name from?
Teddy?
No, he was from Barbersville at first, but then later on, then it became Sam Buckner. Sam Buckner.
Right.
But it was another fellow, and I can't pull his name out, but he was very, he lived in Barbersville. Southall Minor.
Mr. Minor.
Southall Minor, he was the one, and then after he died.
They were wise enough to get the major players, the heavy hitters and teams that were always in demand, like Barbersville and Greenwood and a few other teams. So once they had the Orange with Mr. Washington.
Yeah.
So once they had those core teams that everybody loved to play against anyway, the team still on the outside looking in realized that if we're not willing to join the league, we may not be able to play these guys, you know, as often in the summer. So, like I said, first year 6 teams, next year 10 teams, and I think by the end of the 60s, there were 12 teams in probably 3 or 4 counties. And so that was the first, called the Shenandoah Valley League.
That's right.
The first established league in Central Virginia after, I mean, some of these teams have been playing baseball for probably 50 years already when the league finally gets going. But I think getting Mr. Burgess and Mr. Scott getting the league together, it captured the best of what was black baseball in Central Virginia.
It did, and I think it gave everybody an opportunity to be able to compete and be able to be in the playoff. that didn't mean everybody was gonna get in there, but everybody played the same teams, and they had a time set, I think it was 2 o'clock or 2:30 at the latest. If you got there after 2:30, you could forfeit the game. The team that was at home, if your team got there, 2 o'clock was supposed to be, they supposed to be there by 2. If they got there, 2:30, they could forfeit the game to the home team. But most of the teams that went by, they was glad to have the folk getting there. You might have had a flat tire, anything could have happened. So I don't know if whoever, forfeited the game because of that, but they did have a time set.
That's
And
right.
they did have a rule that if you got there too late, you could lose that game. But if we went back home, if we got somewhere too late, but that very seldom happened. Them folk wasn't gonna lose all that chicken and stuff they got for sale.
So time regulations,
And the umpires.
uniform regulations,
And they supplied the umpire. We had to pay though.
That's
We had
right.
to pay for the umpire when they came.
the umpire, and one of the more humorous features that I write about in the second edition, equipment. Now, equipment, of course, we're talking about bats, balls, and gloves, but we're talking black baseball in Virginia, and in interviewing a fellow years ago, he tells me about joining the Avon team, and he wants, he's excited to be on the team. He wants to make a good impression, even though he's a very good player. He goes out and he buys a box of brand new baseballs, and he brings them to the game that Sunday. And I got an extra box of balls for the team. They're brand new. And his teammate goes, "We're not using those." And he takes them back the next week for a couple boxes of blemish balls, and everybody knows, those are the balls that have the scuffs and marks, and
Right.
and you can still put them in play, but they're not new baseballs. But that was so. The name of the title of the feature in the second edition is "Take Your Ball and Go Home," and it involves Rick's father
Yeah.
and Mr. Arthur Sims, who were longtime friends and rivals, and it's one of the funniest stories of like anything related to sport that you'll ever read.
I thought we had to have, I used to buy the balls for Barbersville when I started playing. And I got them from the store here in Orange, the sports store. Faulkner's. It was on Main.
Faulkner Highway.
Yeah, and so we had a account with them.
Agreement, yeah.
And so we always had a dozen balls to start the game.
Right.
And we had new balls. I don't know where them other ones come from there. but anyway, and so you had to have ball runners so you keep the ball. But the story that he was telling was that needed the guys here to talk for on behalf of their daddy from Greenwood, Mr. Sims. He stopped the game because he wanted to look at the ball. We was pitching. I don't know if Uncle Mac was pitching or who. But at any rate, he wants to look at the ball, but he wasn't supposed to be able to do that. They had to go to the umpire. For the umpire to look at the ball and see whether the ball is no good to throw it out.
His son was pitching.
Okay. And he didn't like the ball that was in the game. So he took the ball and threw it away. And that's when Rick Dad, Uncle Mac, they had a little conversation. They didn't get the fisticuffs, but they argued that point for a while to stop the game and take the ball and throw it away. And the team had to pay kids or young folk to go and find those balls, bring them ball back so we can keep them in the game.
Give them a nickel, they bring them all
Nickel
back to you. 5 cents.
I call that hazard pay. There were briars and everything else in those forests, man.
I'd like to ask some of the players here. Does anyone know why Rappahannock came so famous on Sundays? Everybody wanted to play in Rappahannock?
Good teams up there.
Because there was only beer sold in
I
Rappahannock.
think that's what happened.
That's why Spurs and the Monarchs were
Oh,
the best teams.
Sunday they only sold beer in Rappahannock.
We used to be up there.
Rappahannock was rough.
Oh, the blue law, you couldn't sell alcohol.
Oh, blue laws were where, oh, they weren't in advertising.
You couldn't, I think, was Rappahannock the one that they didn't have it? Well,
They didn't have it.
when Albemarle got it sometime or another, but I don't think Orange had, I mean, you couldn't sell beer in Orange on Sunday.
No, we had to go.
No, we didn't sell beer.
Yeah.
Blue Law then.
So Rappahannock didn't have blue laws.
They didn't have blue law? Oh, they did?
We sold sodas. We sold.
Oh, yeah, that's the way it was for Albemarle County sold, but Orange couldn't.
We sold sodas.
Oh, they were still selling it.
Oh, yeah, like in the trunks.
Okay, before we kind of bring this to a close, although even when we do that, you all are welcome to visit with the players and ask them questions or give them tips on how to hit the ball. But I do want to call on my friend Ron Hill, because what I hear you all talking about is that we don't have enough children playing baseball.
Right.
And they're just not getting that something that you have. And I know Ron, through the PTO Foundation, is wanting to come to Culpeper and sponsor a sort of a PTO tournament. And I think it's important, particularly for black baseball, although we're not segregated anymore. We still need more black players.
Right.
And
Good.
so Ron, do you want to talk a little bit for like a minute and a half about your thoughts and how to get some of these young boys and girls interested? And I think that you all have an obligation to help that effort by lending your own stories and excitement to these young people, so that they feel encouraged and sponsored. Go for it.
The reason why the black kids are not playing baseball is because they're playing football and basketball. And that takes up a lot of their time. And so another reason why we're not playing baseball as young people is because the baseball bats for Little League now are $300. Baseball gloves are $200. So that's the reason why we don't have. So our foundation is trying to get the kids to come and play baseball again, where we will buy some of the equipment and sponsor kids to play. So I like to come to Culpeper and have a tournament with the young kids here. If are the black kids playing baseball here, I don't know. So I have to find out.
Get a town.
So most of our kids
The town team just
play on white teams because there's no
those
teams with a lot of ball players on it.
May the 31st.
So I know that there's corporations that help pay those fees that you're talking about.
Well, since we have a new president, we might not have that no more. Because he's kind of, taking away stuff like that.
Okay, well, I think that if we can,
So we'd have to raise the money ourselves.
if we can work with folks like Ron and also the former players, have them come to these games or come to the tryouts or whatever they do now. Maybe even volunteer to, I don't know, to do a little coaching or something. I don't know what's available, but I just know that getting engaged will help these children, and it'll help us raise money so that only the people who are wealthy can play ball.
That's about it.
That's just crazy.
But
My
they do
grandson
have Little
played.
League here in Culpeper.
They have what?
Little League teams here.
Oh, absolutely. They have a big little league.
But it's only a handful
Right.
of black, my grandson played. It's only a
Okay.
handful of black kids playing it. Can't afford these prices.
That's
They
right.
got the rules set wrong.
Because it's,
He prices right at the game.
Traveling.
Can't, just too many rules. People not honest.
How much your kids got to pay?
Man, you gotta pay for
Mr.
everything.
Flanagan.
I'm honored to be here amongst these people today. I feel like what I'm hearing that I came in toward the end of black baseball. My dad passed away big 3 years ago, 97, and we set it up where they came together to play, to talk baseball. And just listening, in fact, the Monarchs baseball team is still in existence today, but there's no blacks on it anymore. Because when we mixed it up, eventually the blacks stopped playing, and actually moved away. But I want to tell this story, and I just wanted to say that I feel honored because I'm listening to all these. I listened to him talk about a man named George Taylor could hit a ball a country mile.
Yeah.
Richard, you remember George Taylor?
George Taylor. I remember George Taylor.
And one of the last games that I played in, and I was coaching also, as far as two black teams, because we went on to play in Apple Valley Baseball League the year after that. But we had a team, and I believe is it Colesville over to Charlottesville?
That's right, Colesville.
And was the coach Doyle?
Dow. Jim Dow.
Yeah.
Dow.
That's right.
Is he the one you was talking about was so old now?
That's right, that's right.
Jim
I thought it was a Dow.
You talking about Jim?
We went down to play, and I think they beat us. But then when we came to Pinehine. In fact, Pinehine's ball team is still in existence. Got the telephone pole right in the middle.
That sounds like
Had to stop the game and let the cars come in. You remember that? But I don't know where Richard's son is now. But they was beating us, and then we tied it up, and. I was talking to your son, I said, man, I need you to pitch. And he wasn't even there to play. He was at Pinehine. I said, man, I need you to pitch. Finally, he agreed to pitch. He warmed up, and the coach was the first hitter that he was facing. And his son turned that ball loose, and his coach jumped back and said, good God Almighty! And we won that game, but I think that was the last game I remember as far as all blacks playing against each other back then. As I said, I'm honored to be here. I feel like I came. I didn't go to Carver. I'm 70. I don't know how old you all are.
You're a lot older than me.
84.
But
You're a youngster.
I'm a youngster. But I remember that game, and I'm honored to be here today.
There was still plenty of good baseball in your time, your era.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would like to say one thing that, like they said, my mother was a very religious person, so she had kept Howard and I in church until church was over before we could leave to go to the ball game. They had the cars out there, the boys out there waiting on us to get a ride to the church. We get a ride to the ball game. But after that, I think the best thing would really happen to us is that we always had church in our blood. So when I look around and go visit everybody in there, I see ministers that play baseball. There's one, ushers, deacons, trustees are in the church now. That is a beautiful story. Into a beautiful.
And you saying that? I got church tonight. I got church tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you all talking about the ball fields. That man right there can tell you the church or every first and third Sunday
Yes.
where I preach. It don't have no running water, don't have no electricity,
Say it.
but we have church.
You are right.
Very well said. That, from my recollection, the guys who played baseball, they were also really good or instrumental workers in their communities, not just the baseball player on the weekends, but whether it was volunteering, mentoring, their involvement in church or other organizations in the communities. These guys around us today, they're always motivated to do something in the community besides, I mean, of course, they're still known as the outstanding baseball players, but for other reasons and commitments within their communities.
It was indeed that sense of community that swirled around the church often. And I don't, we have to work real hard to build that again. It doesn't seem to come naturally anymore. But it could with the right encouragement. So I think today has been a wonderful start. Darrell, I thank you so much for taking your time to be here, and all of you for being here, because I could listen to your stories all day long. It's growing up in Riva, I was asking Mr. Slaughter about, you talked about Billy Shanks, but I knew another Shanks. His name was Rob Shanks, and he played, I don't know if he ever played on the teams.
He played with the Reba whole team.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, well, the story about Rob was that you said he had a glove, but he
Yeah.
never used it.
He played
always
short.
shot the ball with his bare hand.
Glove. Short.
And
Neck and
I
hand.
played a little
Catch.
softball when I was in
Yeah.
high school, but catching a baseball with your bare hand is entirely different. I've seen some of those catchers in real games doing this after they caught the ball with a glove on.
That's right.
So the stories just keep coming. And playing baseball was part of the life in these communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that we can hope to rebuild that sense of community with our families and our neighbors. Anyway, I thank you all for coming.